To have this morning is a very in-depth one and a very special one to my heart as well, because I have family members who also have autism. So some public education is about to occur, and to help me with this whole discussion, we have Yezuto Gbemonyo, who is the autism awareness, works with the autism awareness at the care. She's a care and training coordinator at Autism Awareness, and also we have Mary Amwa, who's the administrative coordinator of Awawa 2, a center in Hacho. And this brave young lady with us this morning is Nanaya Kufuor, who actually has autism. Good morning to all three of you. How are you? Good. I'm going to come to you first off, Yezuto. In Ghana, we have a major issue with dealing with people who have special needs, first off. Recognizing autism, I think, is very, very low. And in regards to treatment and how we deal with people who have autism is another thing altogether. Explain to us, or let us know, what's the current state of the way we deal with autism in Ghana?
Autism in Ghana, I would say, is, first of all, awareness is very, very low. In that people, when you talk about autism, they're looking out for some physical disability, something that shows physically on the person that he or she has some disability. And so when they see a person or a child who doesn't have any physiological features, but then tends to have unusual behavior, then you can't justify it as being something physical. And so then they tend to relate it to spiritual causes.
Yes.
And then there's the other side where some of the persons with autism who in terms of their intellect seem fine. I mean, they have a regular IQ or even a higher IQ, but then have deficiencies in social interaction.
Right.
People would say, the child is a spoiled child, the parents haven't, brought the child up properly.
Right.
And then there's the last aspect where people would just say, this person is mad or has a mental problem. That's the current state of autism in Ghana.
Okay. Mary, I'm going to speak to you now. Just to let you know that actually Mary is Nanaya's mother. And obviously Mary firsthand can give us some in-depth insights into how people treat you and your daughter.
Well, I think for now, personally, I don't have people, I have gone beyond that state of, being afraid of stigma and all that.
Right,
yeah.
Good.
But I have gone through the stages of denial and saying, it can't happen to me.
Yeah.
This is not me, it's not my portion, all those things.
Yes.
But now, the more I begin to understand my child and let people also understand what I go in with her daily, people are beginning to associate with that on a more positive note.
Good.
Yeah, because I tend to see what she can do and I celebrate that. And
Yes.
people are beginning to, accept that. For instance, a regular child, would talk, would have conversation with you. She may not be able to have regular conversations with me, but the fact that she can speak, sit down quietly and have good eye contact with me, share, a toy or something, play with, that alone means a lot to me. So for me, I write simple, everyday goals that I work on, and as I see those progress, not big ones in quote, I begin,
But they're big to you. That's the thing.
A lot.
They're massive to you. It's just the way
lot.
people would look at it is a different thing altogether.
Exactly. And, parenting itself is difficult. Having a child, a regular child in quotes, raising them is very difficult. And when you have a child who has special needs, then it makes it even very stressful.
Yes.
The emotional constraints on you as a parent, the social stigma, which we'll talk about later, finding the right school, the right support for the child, even going to church, social functions is very difficult because people will not understand why your child is throwing tantrums, why your child is having kind of problem.
Yeah.
Especially when we just walked in, the lights were quite overwhelming for her. Yes, and for her, why have you changed my routine this morning?
That's
this is not where we are usually at on Monday morning.
Not familiar with what her
where is
surroundings.
this? And all these things are things that parents have to deal on a regular basis.
Yes.
And I tell you, the stress is just unimaginable.
can imagine. Okay, now I'm going to ask this, Yezuto, what are some of the things that cause autism? Because, like we said, I mean, first off, we get to the point, Mary said it, you said it, first is denial, we start looking at spiritual, we start looking at, mental issues. But what are some of those things that cause autism first?
Okay, currently it's a combination. They would say that there's a combination of factors. There's no singular factor you can, take out and say, oh, this causes autism.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are the genetic factors where if you've had a child with autism, there's some percentage of risk of having another child
okay.
with autism. And we've had situations where all 3 children in a family have autism.
Mm-hmm.
But again, autism, you don't have every child being the same.
Yes.
And so there are various levels, various behaviors that they'll put up. And then there's also the environment. When you talk about the environment, you're talking about diet. There has been some talk about vaccines. There's been talk about, all the pollution that goes on, lead and all of those things, mercury. And then there's also the age factor of parents. It's said that parents who are older have a risk of having children with autism and even other developmental or neurological disorders.
Okay.
And then there's also the bit about the parents having some immune problems. So in some rates of hypertension, diabetes, and then there's also the fact about depression.
Okay.
Especially when a woman is pregnant. And so it's a combination of all these things. There's just no singular, because I always say from a health educator's point of view that there must be the necessary factor and then all those other factors come in. Yeah.
But with this one, there's no specific.
There's no
Nothing.
Specific.
Okay.
No specific.
Now, dealing with people with autism, obviously you have to be, like you said, you have to have a lot of patience, first off. But what are some of the regular things that we need to be aware of when we're dealing with people with autism?
Dealing with people with autism, first of all, you have to acknowledge the fact that the child or that person is first a person, an individual. Like all of us, they have personality, they have taste, they have style. So let's first treat them from that point of view. Then they also have a voice. They communicate. Now you have to find out, how does this person communicate to me? And then you communicate to them on that level. Because one thing again about persons with autism, if I had autism, how I'll communicate with you is different from how I communicate with my mother, and different from how I communicate with my teacher. And so they have established lines of communication that have to be followed.
Right.
And so those are the main things I would say. Then there's also the fact that they have sensory issues. And so you have to know that this person is a person, just like probably you don't like to have people put their arms over you.
Right.
They probably don't want to have anybody near them, or they probably don't want too many lights, or they don't want too much
noise.
sound or noise, feedback. And so you have to deal with them on that level. I think that once you begin to look at a person with autism first as a person, you will respect that person's likes and dislikes. And then you would also learn to understand the person. And then you can get along.
I'm going to take to you now, Mary, about some of the stuff that you've been through, the stigmatization along the way, because I know for a fact that even when my nephew was diagnosed with autism, one of the first problems that we had was his older brother. His older brother used to bully him quite a lot. And it was fascinating because while we were going throughout this period, we realized quite a lot. I mean, my nephew learned how to read upside down. He actually learned how to read upside down. And when you start realizing that, like you said, they have abilities which go far beyond ours, as well as abilities that are reduced by ours as well, then you actually start to look at them as individuals and treat them in that manner. What are some of the issues that you've had with bringing up Nanaya and the way people have treated you?
I think the first challenge that I had was getting the diagnosis. Getting the diagnosis was very difficult. We visited a few hospitals, and all that I was told was that my daughter would talk, my daughter would do all the things I wanted to do with time. So I should enroll her in a mainstream or the crèche or whatever at the time. And so we moved from hospitals to hospitals, and all that we were told was that she would talk so well, she just have patience.
So how old was she around this time?
She was 3, just
3.
around 3, because before age 2 and age 2.5, she was talking.
Right.
My daughter was talking. She was just like any regular child. And just before 2.5 to 3, she lost all the words.
Okay.
And so we became very concerned, and then we were going from hospital to hospital. Now, one thing with autism is that early intervention counts a lot. So all the time that you go around looking for the cure and being told the things that she could never do, those are, extremely important moments. Yes.
Yeah.
And when we go for this antenatal care and the rest, the sessions that we had at the hospitals, we are being told about, motor skills, all these milestones. But when it comes to communication, you are not being told. So parents will have their children all right, and instead of looking at all those developmental milestones, you completely have no idea what they are.
Right.
I know when my child is supposed to sit, I know when they're supposed to stand, when they're supposed to crawl, when they're supposed to walk and all that. And we know that between this month and this month, you should expect.
Yeah.
When it comes to communication, we don't know.
Right.
And so things like eye contact, pointing, which is very important milestone for communication, sharing of an idea, the child sharing an interest with you, being able to share their toys with you, even the way they play.
Yes.
We completely have no idea the importance of play in a child's life.
So we even need to go back and with prenatal care and actually start looking at that again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we really need to do a lot of education for mothers who are expectant, for them to look at all these milestones, so that you don't wait 2.5, 3 years to be able to. Yes. But back to your question, what are some of the things that I've faced as a mother? So finding the right support and care has been very difficult, because you go to the doctors and I'm sure that they don't know it themselves. The few that also know, they know it probably from one child that they have seen. Now, autism is a spectrum disorder. If you see one child with autism, you have just seen one. So right. What you might have seen and you're doing today, another child with autism might not do that at all. And so if you want to use what your experience with Anaya to diagnose another child, you may make a mistake.
Yes.
Okay, so finding the right, support in terms of hospital has been difficult. Finding the right type of education for her. She's in mainstream school now with support, but our goal is not academic. We just wanted to socialize as much as possible, to be able to go out with her, have her sit here quietly, and me to have an interview with you.
I must say she's been really good.
Exactly, and all these things are very important. To be able to go to church. At a point, I stopped going to church. Because you go, people are looking at you as if you dropped from the space, and people don't understand, and then they begin to offer you, pity. Instead
Which is not what you need.
No, you needed moral support and not that pity. And so that was also finding the right school has been difficult. Now, even in terms of dietary interventions, what foods is she supposed to eat and which ones are not good for her? Which one will make her throw tantrums? All this, one parent. So at the end of the day, you need to become an advocate for your child. You need to become the doctor for your child. And it's a full-time job.
It is,
And so all these things, put a lot of stress on you as a parent.
Okay. We're actually running out of time, but I'm going to ask you this, both of you right now. What is it that you want to see within Ghana change or happen so that children such as Nanaya can grow up fully functional within our society without having any of this so-called wahala?
Inclusive education. Inclusive education, that's what I want. When I talk about inclusive education, a society where people who have any form of intellectual disability would also be accepted in the mainstream school, even if not with academic goals, an integration.
Social interaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People recognizing them as individuals with some level of, problems, and we treat them as such.
Yeah.
Where people would, begin to respect people like my child. It's extremely important. It's extremely important.
I agree
and
with
so
you.
I'm looking at a society where in the near future, we would see people embracing children with disability.
Amen.
Yeah, basically, talking about inclusion, a generally inclusive society would also mean that you're training professionals. It's very sad to know the number of people who work in these fields. The work is so much, and there are just few of us who are in this field. The government has to support the training of specialists, because you need about 9 specialists to work with a child with autism. And when I tell people this, they're like, whoa, it's expensive, it's involving. But we need people like all those who are doing physiotherapy and physical therapy, occupational therapy. They have to know about autism. Speech therapists have to know about autism, how to work with them. You need behavioral therapists. You need educational you need a special education teacher. You need a psychologist. You need a dietitian. And there's so many people that come when it comes to the life of a person with autism. There's so many people that have to be involved. If it comes to the training and raising of such a child, it's not just the parents. Then besides that, you will need the police to understand, because a child with autism would have a problem. But then how they will communicate it, that's going to be a problem. The police have to understand. The law courts have to understand. Everybody has to be involved. And that's what I mean by an inclusive society, because without it, these children are still going to be left in the background, along with other children who have other disabilities. But with autism, I always say it's worse because they cannot communicate properly exactly what they want to say. Now they can't interact, meaning even if they have a problem, they will still keep to themselves or act aggressively. And we need people who can understand these things, and people who will be ready to sympathize.
All right.
It's important to add that not all the children can also go to a mainstream school. So this is very important. Some of them have overwhelming, needs or support, and for that matter, there's absolutely no need to push them into a mainstream. So it's very important parents get that.
All right.
But I would also advise all parents, you cannot underestimate the power of the parent or the family in raising a child with special needs. That love and concern that you show makes a lot of difference.
Thank you ever so much, Yezuto, Mary, and the very brave Nanaya, who behaved herself so well this morning. Thank you so much for coming in. We've been talking about autism. Hopefully you've been educated on it. If not, we'll still do our bit here on TV3 to make sure that you are aware of the social stigmatizations and what we can actually do about them. We'll be back in a few moments right here on the New Day.